Okay, now we're going to go through a couple examples for section 8.2. Okay, so when you do the 8.2 worksheet, this is what you need to look at before you do that. Essentially, 8.2 is distributing, which you guys have done before in the past, but now you have to, it's a little bit more intense than it was before. And then finding the greatest common factor and like undistributing, essentially. So you're going back and forth two different ways. So let's go through an example. Let's say we had negative x to the third, then we had a parenthesis, 9x to the fourth minus 2x to the third plus 7, okay? Now we're distributing, so some people call these rainbows, some people call them, it doesn't matter what you call them. Each term, you have to distribute that negative x to the third to each term, so you need to multiply it by each term. So if I have a negative x to the third times a 9x to the fourth, just take the coefficients first. That's a negative 1 times 9. That's going to give you a negative 9. Now think, when we're multiplying exponents, what do we do with our exponents? We have to add. 3 plus 4 is 7. Okay, now we're going to multiply that negative x to the third times negative 2x to the third. So a negative 1 times a negative 2 is going to give me a positive 2. Now, again, with your variables, what do you do when you're multiplying? You add. What's 3 plus 3? That's 6. So I have plus 2x to the 6th. Now, negative 1 times 7 is negative 7. Now, there's no other variables to multiply against here, so this is just x to the third. Okay, and that would be your answer. Let's try one more of those. Let's say we have 3m squared times 10 plus m. Okay? Got to distribute to both terms. However many are in here, you got to distribute all the way. This one had 3, you had to distribute it 3 times. This one had 2, you have to distribute it 2 times. So 3 times 10 gives me 30. There's no other m's here, so it's just m squared. 3 times 1 is 3, so plus 3. M squared times m. Now remember, this m has an exponent of 1, so this would be m to the third. Now, if you notice on the answer key that they would write this the other way because it'd be in standard form. So they do the highest degree first. So that's why they would write it the other way. Okay, this is not wrong. They're not wrong because of that commutative property. Remember, we can switch the order when we're adding. Okay. Now, if they ask for the greatest common factor, the GCF, the greatest common factor, let's say we have 12x plus 20. What's the biggest number we can take out of both of those that they have in common? So you have to kind of think about it. I know I can take a 4 out of both. If I took a 4 out, I'd be left with 3x plus 5. Now, if you cannot do that in your head, you have to divide then. So what's 12 divided by 4? That's the 3. Okay, didn't do anything with the x, so that has to stay in there. What's 20 divided by 4? That's 5. Okay, so the greatest common factor here is 4. So really all they're looking for is the greatest common factor, just that number outside of the parentheses. If you wrote this, I wouldn't count that wrong because clearly you knew that the greatest common factor was 4 outside of here. So sometimes they'll ask you for the greatest common factor, sometimes they'll ask you to factor. Now, if they're asking you to factor, they just wanted this answer before. So you take out the greatest common factor. Let's do an example. So it's kind of a long one. G to the fourth plus 24g to the third plus 12g squared plus 4g. Now remember, when you're looking for this, you're looking for the greatest common factor, so something that all of them have in common that you can take out of all of them. If you can't take anything out, then that's already in simplified form. Let's take a look. So I have no numbers here. So already I know that I can't take out any numbers. So now we're going to look at variables. I have 4 g's here, 3 g's, 2 g's, and 1 g. What's the biggest I can take out of all of them? Well, you have to go with the least amount. Okay, so I can take out 1 g. So I'm going to put g parenthesis. Now remember, that's like dividing out a g. So if I took 1 out of the 4, I'm left with 3. So I have g3. Haven't taken out any numbers, so 24 needs to stay there. I took out one of the g's, so that's g2. 12 has to stay there. Took out one of the g's, that's g1 or g. okay? And I took out that G, so all that's left there is 4. That would be factoring, writing the whole thing out with the parentheses. Good luck.